Imagine you're alone in a beat-up Jeep, African savanna sprawling endless around you, the air thick with heat and dust. Out of the tall grass steps a lion cub barely bigger than a housecat. It doesn't run, it doesn't snarl. Instead, it rears up on its hind legs, paws clasped like it's begging for something desperate. Is it pleading for help or luring you into a trap? For Jace Carter, a ranger nicknamed Doc for his knack for saving animals, that moment wasn't just strange. It was the start of a story he'd carry. Forever, one choice, one step, and everything he thought he knew about his work was about to change. Jace Carter had been patrolling the vast reserve for nearly a decade, his dusty Jeep rattling over trails carved through golden grasslands. Back in his small Ohio hometown, he'd been the kid who'd skip baseball practice to watch nature documentaries nose pressed against the TV as lions prowled the screen. Those zoo trips with his mom staring wide-eyed at elephants and cheetahs had planted a dream to protect the wild. But dreams come at a price. At 25, he ditched a steady accounting job, a picket fence future, and a fiancé who couldn't fathom why he'd choose danger over stability. "You're throwing your life away, Jace," his dad had said, voice heavy with disappointment. Jace didn't see it that way. Out here he was, Doc the ranger who could stitch up a gazelle's leg free, a hyena from a snare or calm a spooked ostrich with a few soft words. He logged patrols on a tablet, tracked poacher activity with a GPS pinned to his dashboard, and carried a first aid kit bigger than most doctors. His hands were calloused, his cap faded from the sun, but his eyes still lit up when he spotted a herd of impala or heard the distant roar of a lion. This was home, wild, unpredictable, and worth every sacrifice, but lately the losses were piling up, each one a splinter under his skin. Just last week, he'd found a young antelope, its leg mangled in a poacher's snare, eyes dull with pain. He'd knelt beside it, whispering apologies as he ended its suffering. The memory clung to him, heavy as the heat. Was he really making a difference or just patching up wounds in a war? He couldn't win. His team noticed the change. Jace, usually quick with a joke, had gone quiet, his gaze drifting to the horizon. That morning with his crew on a supply run to the nearest town, Jace was alone. The Jeep's engine hummed a familiar rhythm as he navigated the reserve's endless trails. The savanna was a live zebra, grazed in tight clusters, their stripes flickering in the distance. A hawk circled lazily overhead, its shadow slicing the grass. The air smelled of dry earth and something faintly sweet, maybe wildflowers. His radio crackled, a colleague's voice cutting through Jace, heads above. "A poacher sightings near the western ridge. Stay sharp." Jace adjusted his cap eyes, scanning the terrain. Poachers were a constant shadow, their traps and snares, a grim reminder of the stakes. He'd seen too many animals, rhinos, elephants, even lions, maimed or killed for profit. His jaw tightened at the thought, if he could just catch one, maybe it'd tip the scales. He didn't know it yet, but the answer to his doubts was about to find him, stepping out of the grass with a plea he couldn't ignore. Halfway through his patrol, a flicker of movement caught Jace's eye. He eased off the gas, the Jeep slowing to a crawl. From the tall grass emerged a lion cub, no older than 6 months, its tawny fur dusted with dirt. Its eyes, big, golden, and unnervingly human-locked. Onto the Jeep, unblinking. Jace expected it to bolt, like most wild animals would. Instead, the cub did something that made his breath catch. It stood on its hind legs, front paws clasped in front of its chest, like a kid begging for a second helping of dessert. A soft whine, urgent and piercing, spilled from its throat. "What the hell?" Jace muttered. Rolling down the window, the cub didn't flinch. Just stood there, paws twitching, as if trying to speak. His pulse quickened. In 10 years, he'd seen lions hunt, sleep, even play, but never this. He leaned closer, squinting, and spotted a faint scar on its left leg, a jagged line, barely healed. His mind raced back 3 months. Had found this cub limping, a thorn buried deep in its paw infection. Setting in, its mother had lingered nearby, her massive frame tense but still watching, and as Jace cleaned and bandaged the wound, he'd felt her eyes on him, wary but trusting, as if she knew he was helping. Now that cub was back, and it wasn't here to say hello. Jace scanned the horizon, his hand resting on the radio. No mother lion. No pride, just the cub whining louder, its eyes darting between him and the grasslands. His mentor's voice echoed in his head. "Lions aren't pets, Jace, trust your gut, but don't be stupid. Following a wild animal was a gamble, especially with poachers prowling." The radio crackled again. his colleagues warning about the western ridge looping in his mind. But those eyes, God, they were practically screaming for help. He killed the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the cub's whines. Stepping out, his boots crunched on the dry earth, the heat pressing against his skin. The cub dropped to all fours, took a few steps, then glanced back, its tail flicking. "Come on," it seemed to say. Jace grabbed his radio and first aid kit, sweat beading on his brow. His gut churned with equal parts caution and curiosity. "All right, kid," he said softly, his voice steady despite the adrenaline. "Show me what's wrong." The cub led him through the savanna, its small form weaving through grass that brushed Jace's knees. The sun blazed, painting the landscape in harsh golds and browns. Every rustle made him tense. Poachers could be anywhere, their trucks hidden behind a ridge. His radio crackled faintly, but he ignored it. Focused on the cub's determined stride, they covered maybe 500 yards, the air growing thicker with the scent of dust and animal. The cub's ears twitched, its pace slowing. A low groan rumbled ahead, deep in pain Jace's. Stomach tightened. He knew that sound, a lion in trouble. In a clearing, the cub's mother lay sprawled, her massive frame heaving with labored breaths. A steel trap, its jaws gleaming like a predator's. Teeth was clamped around her hind leg. Blood matted her golden fur, pooling in the dirt. Her eyes, fierce yet glazed with pain, flicked toward Jace, then softened as the cub nuzzled her flank, whining. The cub looked at Jace, its gaze a desperate plea that hit him like a fist to the chest. "Hang on, girl," Jace whispered, crouching low. The lioness growled, a deep rumble that vibrated the air. But it faded as he spoke, his voice calm and steady. He talked down spooked antelopes and cornered jackals, but a wounded lioness was a whole different beast. The trap was massive, its rusted teeth designed for rhinos or elephants. Not lions, it had cut into her leg deep, but not bone deep. Lucky, but she wasn't out of danger. Jace edged closer, his hands steady despite the adrenaline spiking his veins. The cub paced nearby, its whines like a kid urging him to hurry. He examined the trap, its hinges creaking as he tested the tension. Poachers always poachers. His jaw clenched, the antelope's dull eyes flashing in his mind. Not this time, not her. With a grunt, he pried the trap open, muscles straining against the steel. The lioness roared a sound that shook the earth as the jaws released. Blood seeped, but it wasn't as bad as he'd feared. He darted to the jeep, grabbed the first aid kit, and sprinted back. His ears straining for the hum of poacher trucks, the radio crackled, another warning about nearby activity. No time to waste. Kneeling beside the lioness, Jace worked fast, her eyes golden and piercing, stayed on him not with threat, but with something else, trust maybe, or hope. The antiseptic's sharp scent cut through the smell of blood and dust as he cleaned the wound. Gauze went on next, wrapped tight but gentle, his fingers moving with the precision of a surgeon. The cub circled its small body, brushing against its mother as if cheering her on. Jace's hands never shook, but inside he was racing. Poachers could be minutes away, their eyes on him through some hidden lens. He tied off the bandage, checking it twice. The lioness stirred, her breathing steadier. The cub rubbed its head against her, a soft purr rumbling from its throat. Jace exhaled, the knot in his chest loosening just a fraction. "You're gonna make it," he said, more to himself than to her. But the danger wasn't over, not yet. As Jace packed his kit, a glint in the grass caught his eye. He froze, heart slamming against his ribs. A small camera, its red light blinking like a predator's. Eye was tied to a nearby acacia tree. It was live streaming, feeding every move to whoever set the trap. Poachers weren't just nearby. They were watching, maybe already on their way. He lunged for the camera, yanking it down with a curse. A tag dangled from the cord, etched with initials. KR. Jace's breath caught K.O. Rourke. He'd been tracking that name since a deadly raid 3 years ago, when poachers led by Rourke ambushed a ranger outpost, killing 2 of Jace's friends. The memory burned, blood on the dirt radio, screaming, and Rourke slipping away into the night. This wasn't a random trap. It was a taunt, a move in a game Jace hadn't known he was playing. He smashed the lens glass, crunching under his boot, but the damage was done. Rourke knew he'd been here, knew he'd saved the lioness. Jace's mind raced. He was alone, miles from backup, with no weapon but a utility knife. But as he looked at the cub still nuzzling its mother, a fire ignited in his chest. This wasn't just about saving one lion. It was a chance to strike back, to finally nail the man who'd haunted his nightmares. He grabbed the radio, voice low and urgent. "Base, it's Jace, found a trap and a live stream camera." "KR's work, yeah. That KR in bringing evidence, send back up to the Western Ridge now." The lioness stirred, testing her leg, and Jace knew he had to move. Poachers could be closing in their trucks, kicking up dust just beyond the horizon. But he wasn't running. Not this time. The lioness stood, her bandaged leg wobbling but holding under her weight. She turned to Jace, her eyes gleaming in the fading light, like she was saying something words couldn't touch. The cub bounded to her side, rubbing its head against her flank, its tail flicking with joy. Jace stepped back, a smile breaking through the exhaustion etched into his face. "You're tough, girl," he said, his voice soft but proud. As they moved toward the horizon, the cub paused, looking back at Jace. It let out a soft roar, a rare, almost musical sound that sent a shiver down his spine. A thank you, maybe, or a goodbye. Jace touched the ranger badge pinned to his chest, its edges worn from years of patrols. It was a silent vow to keep fighting for them, for every animal out here. The lioness and cub faded into the tall grass, their silhouettes swallowed by the sunset's fiery glow. Jace stood there, the savanna stretching quiet around him, and felt something shift. The doubt that had weighed him down was gone, replaced by a clarity he hadn't felt in years. Back at base, Jace didn't just file a report. He slammed the trap and shattered a camera onto the table, his team crowding around. "This is KR," he said, pointing to the tag, his voice steady but fierce. "Has out there, and we've got a lead. We can take him down." Who's in hands went up, voices overlapping with plans and promises. For the first time in weeks, Jace felt the weight of failure lift. That cub's plea, the lioness's trust, it wasn't just a rescue. It was a turning point, a reminder of why he had left everything behind. The story spread like wildfire through the reserve visitors' packed ranger talks. Eyes wide as Jace recounted the cub standing on two legs, the lioness' grateful gaze, the camera that turned a rescue into a mission. It wasn't just a tale of bravery. It was a call to protect the wild, to stand up to those who tear it apart. Jace kept the cub's roar in his heart, a sound that grounded him through every patrol, every trap he dismantled, every step toward bringing Rourke to justice. This isn't just Jace's story, it's about what happens when you answer a call, no matter how wild or risky. That cub's courage, Jace's grit, they show us something. One choice can change everything. It hit me hard learning about rangers like Jace out there fighting for animals most of us only see on screens. Groups like the Wildlife Conservation Society are doing the same, battling poaching and protecting the wild. I started digging into conservation after this, and it's opened my eyes. Maybe it'll spark something in you too. Take one step, share this story, check out a wildlife charity, hit subscribe to keep these tales alive. Jace didn't back down, and neither should we. What's one thing you'll do to stand up for the wild? Let's make it count.